This year has gotten off to a flying start for Xbox, and we're even getting a pretty juicy showcase on the 22nd of January, showing off the likes of Fable, Forza, and so much more. Well, until then, Xbox have now decided to grace us with yet another insane sale, and somehow they just keep lowering the prices on fantastic games to the best that I've actually ever seen and even reported on. We even have a franchise that is down to a ridiculous discount, so do stick around to hear more about that one. Before we do dive in though, I do of course give away a free Xbox game as part of these sales videos every single week. All you have to do is just comment below and you're automatically entered. Congratulations to our last week's winner. Just hit me up on our Discord with a link below and I'll get that game right over to you. With that though, let's dive into the bloody huge sale going on within the Xbox store as of right now. First up, we have Overcooked All You Can Eat, and this one is just pure cult chaos that's distilled into one beautifully frantic package. This edition actually rolls together both of the Overcooked games, every single bit of DLC they've ever released, alongside sharper visuals and smooth performance on the series consoles, turning this already brilliant part of the game really into that definitive edition. On the surface though, it's simple. You basically prep ingredients, cook different dishes, and then serve them before time runs out. In practice though, it's just absolute mayhem and carnage at the very next level. Your kitchens will fall apart, orders will pile up, and friendships certainly will be tested. And I will say from personal experience, my partner definitely doesn't like playing this game with me. With both local and online multiplayer, it's kind of perfect for those sofa sessions or just long distance teamwork, especially if you have one of those free moments on the weekend. The added accessibility options they added alongside crossplay make it so much easier than ever to jump in, and for just £9, this is actually hands down the best value we've seen for one of the greatest co-op games available on your Xbox consoles. Now, Crown Trick is a roguelike turn-based dungeon crawler with a very unique twist. Your movement and combat are all tied together in a grid system where everything only moves when you do, adding a very strong strategic element to every single encounter. In this one though, you play as Elle, and you'll be navigating through a surreal, ever-shifting nightmare world armed with magical relics, elemental powers, and an enchanted crown. The combat, as you're probably well aware of what's being shown on screen, is very tactical but fast-paced, and there's a lot of different environmental combos and enemy abilities that really force you to think ahead. Each run does feel distinct time and time again though, thanks to that wide variety of different procedurally generated rooms, and that's all alongside the gear and passive upgrades. I have to say, I really kind of dig that colourful visual style, alongside the tight mechanics and a really rewarding loop here, and for me Crown Trick was the ideal pick, especially if you like games like Dead Cells or even Hades. At this price point, it's an excellent value this week, sat at just £4, and it includes some serious depth about it. If you remember a few months back now, I actually got my hands on with Echoes at the End, and honestly, the enhanced edition is the version this game was always deserved to be. You will step into the role of Rin, a warrior that's bound to the remnants of an ancient magic that hasn't quite faded away. When her brother is suddenly taken and tensions boil towards an all-out war, everything becomes personal pretty fast. What really surprised me about this one was just how cinematic it is for such a small team. You have such things like sweeping set pieces, fluid traversal systems, and even some punchy combat that clearly takes notes from games like Uncharted and God of War without feeling like a clone of it. Enemy variety also keeps encounters pretty fresh throughout the entire game, and the pacing never outstays its welcome for that 10 to 12 hour runtime. It's such a tight and satisfying adventure that respects your time and just went heavily under the radar, and I tell you what, if you do want to check out my full review of it, then you can do with the link down below. The Serpent Rogue is also one of those games that quietly just pulls you in when everyone else is shouting. You play as a warden, and you're basically an enigmatic figure wandering a decaying medieval world that's slowly being overtaken by corruption. This game is driven by curiosity, so stuff like brewing potions, testing ingredients, and just learning through trial, error, and discovery. There's going to be no hand-holding as well here, just systems that kind of reward your patience and experimentation. Visually though, and as you're probably aware as well, it is very gorgeous in a sort of subdued way, with a lot of painterly environments that feel eerie, lonely, and oddly calming. The atmosphere for me though was the one that actually gave me most of the storytelling here, letting the world actually speak for itself without any dialogue. Right now, this game is down a massive 90% this week, bringing it down to just £1.59. It's criminally good value at that price, and if you love crafting, discovery, and somber fantasy worlds, then definitely don't sleep on this one. I mentioned it at the start of the video that there was a franchise that is down quite considerably in price this week, and that is for Kingdom Come Deliverance. That's right, both Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 and 2 are on sale, and this is for both Royal Editions, and that's a stupid amount of content for you to delve into right out the gates. The first KCD game is now down to about £7 and is the lowest price for the Royal Edition ever since the second game was released. To give you some insight, this is the beginning of the journey with Henry, who's the blacksmith, as he navigates the world of medieval Bohemia after a raid occurs on his village. It's a fairly good story here, and the RPG elements are insanely in depth. You do also get all of the DLC as well, which is quite lovely, and the game holds up so well in today's Xbox Series X generation. Then you have Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 Royal Edition. This game is a definition of a masterpiece, and I could say this is probably my favourite RPG ever since The Witcher 3. This one does continue the story of Henry though, and it does come to a great conclusion towards the end, but does leave some room for more within the future. The world in this one is just so much larger than the original in so many ways, and always some heavily improved mechanics which are very welcome, and overall it's just so stunning to look at. Some games these days look great, but Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 for me really amplifies how gorgeous they can actually be on such a relatively low budget. There is a reason why Warhorse Studios were nominated for a Game of the Year award, and it is just such a shame they really didn't get anything. The newer DLC included with the Royal Edition are pretty decent, especially the blacksmith one, and it kind of allows you to build your own homestead and so much more. It's an insanely rich franchise, and not playing either is really the service, especially when there's such good value within this sale. I do have another game that's also decent in the sale as well, but we'll touch on that a little bit towards the end of this video. At just £2, this next game today is one of those where curiosity alone will really justify your purchase entirely of this one. Blackguard 2 is a turn-based tactics RPG, and it leans heavily into positioning, preparation, and making the most of your limited resources. It's a slower and way more less forgiving game than it first appears, which I kind of like because every move feels deliberate. The story is way darker than I expected when I picked this one up, focusing on that kind of power struggle and morally messy decisions rather than heroic fantasy tropes. It's definitely rough around the edges for sure, and it doesn't have the bigger polish of bigger tactics games out there, but there's depth here if you're willing to really engage with it. It's a decent sequel, although essentially very little has changed, and it feels more like a large-scale DLC than a fully fledged second part. Still, it's totally worth it this week, especially now that it's less than the price of a good old cup of tea. Children of Silentown was a really unique indie that I stumbled upon when it launched a couple years back now, and this one uniquely tells its story from the perspective of a child just trying to make sense of a village where people keep disappearing, and that alone gives it a real unsettling edge. The puzzles are quite simple and never really the focus of the entire game, because what matters here is its atmosphere, the music, and the storytelling. It has such a gorgeous art style, a really compelling story, and just such clever puzzles. Overall, I really had an enjoyable time with this one. I would certainly recommend this game to anyone who likes something very unique, a really well written story with lovable characters, and one that has an overall eerie and mysterious vibe. It's not a long game and it's not too loud, but it's certainly a memorable one, and at just £9 I feel that it's a decent price, and it's the least that's actually been since its launch day. We all know how bad that Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown was when it first launched, and safe to say after many updates in 2025, it really isn't that great. You may be wondering why I'm even recommending it, and that's solely because the game is quite cheap this week, only £10, and for me that's a pretty alright asking price for this one. If you are unfamiliar, this wasn't trying to be a hardcore racing sim, and once you kind of accept that, it becomes far more enjoyable. There is a focus on cruising, exploring a large open world city, and then building a car collection rather than chasing perfect lap times. I've only recently just come back to it, and there have been many positive changes. Granted, there are still plenty of things wrong with this game, but the overall experience feels way better when it first released. It's a good casual driver, just don't ever be tempted by the absurd microtransactions. There's going to be no subtlety in this next game today, and that's exactly why it's so appealing. Wildcat Gun Machine is a very strange name, but it's a very fast, chaotic twin-stick shooter, and it throws enemies at you constantly and dares you to keep up. The levels in this one are pretty short and intense and perfect for quick sessions where you just want to dive in for some instant action. I like how aggressive this one feels. You're always constantly moving, dodging, and clearing rooms as fast as possible. I will say there's basically no story to speak of, but that's kind of fine because the game knows that it's all about its momentum. The difficulty curve can also get pretty steep in the later levels, but that feeling of clearing a room and being able to progress or just killing a boss is pretty great. If you're a fan of twin stick shooters and bullet hell games, I'd say give it a go. For £3.24, it really is a steal and not a big asking price, and I don't think you'll find it much cheaper elsewhere for quite some time. If you are looking for a decent horror title and don't want to break the bank, then let me introduce you to Those Who Remain. This one takes place in a quiet town where darkness itself is dangerous, forcing you to move slowly and think about where you're standing at all times. That mechanic alone really created some great tension without relying on jump scares, and that story leans into psychological themes like guilt and fear while not particularly well executed. I appreciate how restrained it does feel compared to louder horror games out there, and for £2.40 it is an easy recommendation if you enjoy these sort of slower burn horror experiences. For me, I definitely didn't like the silhouettes just chilling in the shadows, especially in the buildings, and because of that, turning on the lights made me jump every single time. This is one of those games that sounds stressful until you actually start playing it, and then it becomes strangely calming. Insurmountable is another roguelike on this list today, but it's about climbing huge mountains, and is not about speed or reflexes. Instead, it's all about its decision making. Every step in that reality becomes a choice. Do you push on whilst you're tired and use your supplies now, or risk resetting and losing your momentum? I just really love how it forces you to think ahead instead of reacting like in most roguelikes out there. There's also a really cool sort of mental health system that's been added, and it asks you to constantly jug your panic and fear, as they can easily end a run just as quickly as your bad planning. It's clearly presented, easy to understand, and surprisingly addictive once this one clicks, and definitely is a unique one on this list today. It's not very cheap, it is about £7.50 at the moment, but I would say if you're a strategy game enthusiast or you like survival games that reward patience, planning and learning, then this is going to be a great pickup and probably one of your favourite indies for 2026. Bulwark Evolution is all about building massive structures across dramatic ocean landscapes, and it gives you very little direction on purpose. This game isn't about constant objectives or even timers pushing you forward. You're instead free to experiment, expand and just see what works, and ultimately how to win the game. I personally haven't played this one, but I know many out there say that it's very relaxed in its feeling compared to most strategy or city building games, and I think that's all sort of part of the appeal, to be honest. You will be stacking things like towers, bridges and settlements in a way that feel organic rather than optimal. The combat in this game really does exist, but it's slightly optional, which lets the game breathe and allows you just to build your different structures. The art style does a lot of heavy lifting here. Of course, it's from the Falconeer dev, so you already know that it's going to be absolutely gorgeous for an indie, and it kind of makes your simple constructions as well feel way more impressive and atmospheric. It is down to £6, and it's a fantastic option if you want some more creative freedom in games, and I will say it's a pretty decent game in its own right, which it's a small solo developer. I'll be honest with you, Dolmen is a game where expectations matter a lot. It's a sci-fi Souls-like that really did aim high, and it didn't always hit that cleanly, and at full price that's certainly an issue when you're trying to appeal to people. At £2.50 though, the conversation completely changes, and that's why I'm recommending it. The combat is more slow and methodical and stamina based, and it's quite punishing if you rush, which actually fits into the genre once you adjust to it. I actually really like the atmosphere quite a bit here. The alien environments feel really bleak, lonely and appropriately hostile. The enemy encounters do also demand your patience, and you definitely have to learn the patterns far more in this one instead of more raw aggression like other Souls-likes out there. It's not as polished or fluid as bigger Souls-like names out there, and that's part of the charm, to be honest, but it's still quite an enjoyment here if you're willing to meet it halfway. For this price, it's an easy recommendation if you're curious about it, or if you just don't want to spend much money and want a pretty decent game. I mentioned in the previous sales video a few days back now that this game was on sale for only 24 hours, and that discount was utterly insane. Well, out of nowhere, the Steelrising devs have decided to keep that discount running a little bit longer now, and you have up until the 27th of January to grab this incredible Souls-like for just £5. You may remember, but I've said this one is one of the best Souls-like games I've played in recent years. Instead of trudging through classic Souls-like gloom, you instead glide across rooftops of Aegis, who is a mechanical dancer turned death machine in Paris. The combat is very sharp and graceful, less like a brawl compared to other Souls-likes, and I kind of compare it to something like Sekiro in terms of its fluidity. Many of you know me, I'm not the biggest Souls-like enjoyer, so a game in this genre really has to be special to suck me in. This is that game, and I highly recommend it, especially as it's a bloody bargain. What game are you thinking about picking up this week in the Xbox Store sale? You'll have to let me know in the comments below. Remember to smash that like button if you enjoy videos like this and want to see more, and do subscribe as well, as I am uploading Xbox content on a daily basis. If you do want to check out some more amazing Xbox content, I recently just reviewed Mio Memories of Orbit, which went live as of today, and I tell you what, this is one Metroidvania that is rivaling the likes of Silksong in a very big way.